Hello. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Martie Wallace with King Law Offices. I'm a junior partner here, and we are the Legacy Ladies talking about everything legacy.
And I'm Allie Bushelli. I'm also a junior partner here at King Law Offices. And our topic for this podcast or this set of videos will be Ladybird Deeds, which probably sounds really odd the first time you hear it.
That's what I thought. And then I was thinking Ladybird Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what is the idea behind a Ladybird deed? Well, we're going to protect our assets from Medicaid grabbing it when we've been in a Medicaid nursing home. So, how does that relate to Ladybird Johnson? Well, President Johnson put in the Social Security. I think he was in the Medicaid.
Social Security Act, Medicaid, everything like that.
I'm really showing what a genius I am.
No.
History and how our country took care of business for people who were having troubles financially. But then I'm like, but this is to keep it out of Medicaid's hands. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Right. So it started, Ladybird Johnson was doing this type of thing in Texas, where they're from. She started coming up with this idea of protecting homesteads and homes, and it just developed into North Carolina, giving everyone Ladybird Johnson's name on these deeds.
Knowing all the history.
Yeah. It's what I enjoy. I got it.
Color me impressed.
Okay.
Very good. All right. Well, in terms of North Carolina, how does this work?
So, for a Ladybird deed, what the entire goal is, and we've talked about this before, is to make sure that Medicaid cannot compel you to your children or your heirs to sell your primary residence after you pass away. So to even kind of talk about it first, the idea that North Carolina has what's called Medicaid estate recovery is important to talk about. So in the state of North Carolina, while you're applying for Medicaid, you'll probably hear a social worker telling you, well, you need to sell the primary residence. You need to sell your home if you're going to need nursing home care. That's actually not true in most circumstances.
Another reason why you shouldn't practice law without a license.
Yes, very true.
All right, go ahead.
So you can't be compelled to sell your primary residence as long as the equity, and so we say the word equity specifically because we're talking about the value of your home minus anything, any mortgages, HELOCs, or home equity lines of credit, liens, anything. It has to fall under Medicaid's $716,000 limit for the value of your primary residence.
Which goes up every year, doesn't it?
Every year, every 2 years, they reassess and talk about it. So as long as the value of your home is under that, and the value, the equity in it is under that, your primary residence is exempt from Medicaid compelling the sale of it. Well, if you can keep it, and you can, feel like Medicaid will actually, give services, then North Carolina has what's called Medicaid estate recovery, which means after you pass away, if you received Medicaid services for nursing home care, then Medicaid can file a claim within your estate to say, we need to be paid back for the care that we provided. And usually that bill is so large because nursing home care is not cheap. So that bill is so large that the home ends up needing to be sold to satisfy it. And most people, that is their asset. That is what they have. That's their pride and joy, right? How many times have we said, I just want to make sure the home is safe?
Yep, because they've got their descendants that would get something, and there is something about leaving something behind for your kids or whoever you have in your will. I know that's important to me. And then you also think too, I worked all these years and I made all this, but I also paid into the system when I worked all those years. And there is a mindset, and I have to say I'm part of it. I don't want to work all these years, build up my equity in my house, and then have something happen to me that I didn't anticipate. Then there is public assistance available for that. And then I have to pay it back when I paid into it all those years. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I think there's other people that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to. And if the government allows it, in this case, it's the agency, the Medicaid is allowing the Ladybird deed. Not so much. It's not statutory. That's where we run into, that we'll talk about a little bit later, but it's Medicaid that has the carve out. They're the very agency that is allowing this. So go ahead. I just
no, that's perfect.
I'm good at that. Ask Allie. I'm good at that. I cut her off. Yeah, I gotta talk. I'm a talker.
It's fine. The Italian in me just like, I'll talk over you.
and I love it. So we get along great that way.
So the big thing with the Ladybird deed is you're making a plan for what is going to happen to your home after you pass away without any interference. So you would transfer, technically, it's a brand new deed. You transfer your home to yourself and remainder interest holders, which are the people you want to see have it after you pass away. The beauty of the Ladybird deed is you don't lose any autonomy in what you can do with your house. You can sell it, mortgage it. I mean, you could burn it to the ground. I don't necessarily.
I tell my clients, burn it to the ground. Just don't call it arson.
Right. Right. Don't. You have all the control that you need to have over your home for your lifetime. And then the deed is only effective once you pass away for the remainder interest holders, which is different from the traditional life estate deeds that most of us used to do before Medicaid did this carve out. Traditional life estate deeds are, you're going to live there for the rest of your life, but your remainder interest holders can control what happens to the house and they have to sign off on everything. I've ran into issues where someone just wants to have the roof replaced. They just want to have the roof replaced. It needs to be done. It's been their house forever, but they've got this traditional life estate deed. And the contractor's saying, well, for me to have lien rights, I need your remainder interest holders to sign this deed or to sign this contract. And their kids live in different states. How difficult is that on everyone?
There's another caveat too to that, where I was doing a lot of us attorneys, especially here at King Law, when there are pro bono options that we can become a part of. Which one of them was these, where I was on the phone and people would just call in and I could give legal advice and they would get it for free. And a lady said that she had a Ladybird deed, but she wants to change it. I said, let me pull that up. Well, she had gone to an attorney that didn't write it up as a Ladybird deed. And I don't know what their conversation was during their consult and what he was supposed to do, but it was a traditional life estate. And she said she wanted to change it. Well, there's another problem. She wanted to take someone off that was a remainder man. I said, well, if they're willing to consent to that, you can. She goes, wait, I have to have his consent? Yes, ma'am. This is permanent unless everyone signs off on it. That was not a good day for her at all. No. So that's where it pays to have an attorney that's done these before and understands them.
Right. And I mean, this is the deed I recommend for almost every estate planning client I have. Even when someone's setting up a trust, I'll recommend doing a Ladybird deed versus putting this into a trust, because the Medicaid protections are so substantial and you want to make sure that this is protected. Like I said, this is usually most people's biggest legacy. This is the biggest asset they have. This is where they put all of their heart, soul, money into. Understandably, you're living there. It's your home.
Right.
And you want to leave it to your kids. And even if your kids are going to sell it, a lot of times we have people whose kids live out of state or they have their own houses. They don't want mom and dad's house. You want to at least leave them the money and the option to sell it.
Right.
And that's why the Ladybird deed is great. Another good thing with the Ladybird deed is, I believe, the St. Germain Act that we've got in North Carolina, where you can have a current mortgage on your property and still execute a Ladybird deed. Traditionally, when you have a mortgage on your house, you can't do any type of new deed. It kind of invalidates some of your mortgage, and your mortgage company could say, hey, we've got a, problem and I'm going to call the note. You've changed something. We've got an issue.
And even with that act, they'll say it. That's where we come in. Yeah.
Right. And a simple letter to the lender usually satisfies it with a Ladybird deed. But because you have complete autonomy in your property under this Ladybird deed, you can still, your mortgage company can still foreclose. Hopefully that never happens. But as far as they're concerned, it's not really much of an issue. And the act specifically protects Ladybird deeds being recorded when deeds of trust is what they're called in North Carolina, when deeds of trust still exist on a property.
I have a question for you, Allie, and I just want to get your opinion because this is all speculation. People will say, well, is this going to be good for a while? And coming from the healthcare, this is my second career, first career in healthcare. I think because I was around when the Affordable Care Act went into play, I was doing healthcare then, and Medicaid and Medicare are not really sustainable for financial reasons. And my concern is that because it is Medicaid that allows this carve out, that they're going to pull it. My guess would be that it's going to be something where we've grandfathered in these other people because they have relied on it. And I say we could have a defensive promissory estoppel where they relied on it to their detriment if you pull it. And so I don't know how much longer this would go. It'd have to be a court case because, again, it's not a statute that the legislature can put into existence. I guess they could remove it with a statute. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think that there's a good chance that the law stays in place for a good bit. I agree with you that there's probably if there's ever a change from Medicaid, there'd be a grandfathering in. If not, there's going to be a lot of litigation about that.
I agree.
Because I know I would be one to show up at the North Carolina Supreme Court to say, what the heck, I had umpteen clients depending on this to their detriment. They made this decision based on this law staying in existence. And I think it'd be a grandfathering in. But also, if when you use King Law, you can always come back as a returning client to revisit. And there's other options. There are older options that they're not perfect, but there are other options to exercise. Let's say the Medicaid cancels the carve out and you've done a Ladybird deed and there's a moment of panic, understandably so. We do offer our clients to come back. They can have a consultation free of charge as returning clients, and we can talk about options because there's still options out there.
One of the wonderful things I think about coming to King Law for any of your legal needs, especially when it comes to anything legacy or protecting anything, these laws that could change, or in that case, it would be a rule or regulation in an agency like Medicaid, that I followed that stuff. So I would say, hey, you guys, at our every Friday, we have a practice area group meeting, team-wise. Every one of the attorneys that practices in our practice area group shows up to these meetings. I think I'm always... It's not mandatory because some of us could have something going on in a court or something that we absolutely have to be at. And I am always complimented because Allie and I run those meetings.
Right.
I'm always complimented that all of our attorneys show up. They want to know. They want to know what's going on. They want to present their case that is giving them some trouble. Like, I don't know how to proceed here. Has anyone done this before? And oftentimes, between you, John Protz, me sometimes, we have an answer. Like, oh yeah, I've done this before. This is what you need to do. And in our electronic database, it's so funny, us attorneys, we know the name of the client. Could we tell you what we ate for lunch yesterday? No, but we know the name of that client. And so we say, hey, go to this file. You're going to see in this file folder that exact thing that I did. And you know what that does? It gives our attorney that's not done that particular thing before, because we get some crazy fact patterns. It gives them confidence. Okay, not only can I do this, I can do this and not have to reinvent the wheel. The second thing it does is it lowers the cost for the client. Our guy doesn't have to redraft an entire document and hopefully, catch all the things. Of course, usually we follow the statute. So we're saving money for our client. We have the brain power of about 10 to 12 attorneys at that point. Mm-hmm. Also, if we have a procedural question in the civil realm, we can pick up a civil litigation attorney to get our help with that. I can't say enough good things about the firm, and it's not just because I work here. I hear this from other people, or we've hired other attorneys that come into our firm that have worked with other firms and say the mentorship here, and you can have mentorship and need mentorship when you are an attorney who's been practicing for 20 years, because there is always going to be a fact pattern that, wow, I've had this before, but this little nuance changes absolutely everything. So that's one of the great things about coming to King Law. But and as far as the Ladybird deed, if Medicaid does change their rule around that, one of us is going to know, and her name starts with an M and ends with Martie. I follow that stuff, and I like all that stuff, and I get listservs, and I get case law, and other attorneys that we just like to sit around and talk about Medicaid. So we'll send it to each other. So there's that coming to King Law, we're going to be one of the first to know about this. Right. And the other thing with our electronic, I almost said electronic medical records, our electronic legal records, right, we can actually do a report. Who did we write? Who did we do Ladybird Deeds for? And we can, if there needed to be an absolute measure, we can start calling those clients saying, hey, we might need to look at a 199 deed or something, but if it doesn't grandfather out. But like you said, I can't imagine. There's too many of them out there.
Too many of them out there. I think the just threat of litigation would be too much for most of these people. And so it would be prospective, not retrospective. Like, okay, all these things are, no longer effective. Calls to the civil for any help on potential litigation. Pretty easy for yours truly.
That's right. Allie's husband is on our civil litigation team, and he's a go-to of mine. He's the first person I call when I have a procedural issue.
It's just quick text, hey, I have this issue. Yeah. So we do have a very team mentality here, which is super helpful. And Martie's right; she'll be one of the first people to know, and then we're gonna start looking and seeing what we can do for our clients and see what we can change. But I still think it's well worth it, even with the threat of a potential change.
And even though today we talked about labor needs, if there's anything that you have a question about, or you're wondering, hey, is this legal? Just put it in the comments if that's the platform that we're on for you, because we stream this across many different platforms. Throw it in the comments section and we'll try and address that. Or you can always call our office and get a consult with one of our attorneys. Do I have that phone number memorized? No, I do not, but I think she does.
I do. So if you want to schedule a consultation, our client services team will be more than happy to assist you. The phone number is 828-286-3332, and they'll set you up with myself, Martie, or another member of our team, and we'll be more than happy to talk you through all of it.
Have an awesome day.
Thank you.